My week has been an interesting one because for the last number of weeks, so I'm sure you've been picking it up pretty much every Friday when we talk, my response is that I'm tired, right? I've been going hard and I've been tired. And I've been mitigating that to an extent by taking good care of myself on the weekends. And it's almost become this state of flow where I started to feel that competitive nature in myself, where it was like feeling really good about being in flow, making progress, almost like the runs on the board kind of idea, which is very much a sort of competitive gamification of just like, you got to keep the score up or keep the number of runs going. And I have noticed the thoughts in my mind of wanting to rest, wanting to take a break. But then there's this other part of me that's like, yeah, but we could just do a bit more. Just a few more things. We can do it. It's all right. We got this. And I thought that I still had everything under control in hand and that I was generally doing quite well. But I think what I've been doing is sort of propping myself up enough on the weekends that I've been kind of going a little bit harder during the week that I probably should, because I've been able to sort of catch myself back up again and then just use that almost like as a springboard to push further. So like, for example, I noticed on Sunday morning, I went to my yoga in the morning and then I felt so inspired that I spent the next hour creating a program and then coming up with all these ideas about what I was going to do. So it's like adding yet another thing onto my already long list. But the energy that came from it just makes me feel like, I've got this. I can do everything. You know? That sort of illusion of there's always more. There's always more capacity. There's always more. And so on Wednesday morning, when I got up in the middle of the night, as I quite often do, to go and help one of my kids with things, I got close to the door of my bedroom and then just went unconscious. And smacked my head on the corner of a dressing table and had no idea what had happened until my eyes opened and I had this really, really sore head. So I've reached a limit of such, obviously. And went to A&E, had all sorts of tests done. My heart is healthy, my blood pressure is good, my blood sugars are good, like all the things which they would have an immediate concern over. No problems. Neurologically, nothing to worry about. But stress was one factor that I had to say, well, actually, yes, I have quite a few things in a number of areas of my life that I am pushing and working towards and trying to do things under compressed time frames and extending the hours of my day to try and fit more in. And so I thought like, okay, so this is probably just a message of my body saying slow down. And I went to my chiropractor today and like my neck and everything was a complete mess. Like my skull had impacted in and like all sorts of weirdness was going on in my neck. So have had some lovely work done to get mobility back in places where there wasn't much. And I'm now going like, I learned something interesting from my chiropractor. So there's this little spot. There's a spot in the back of your neck where when you start to get stressed, like when you start to hold tension from being, there's a little space where your spinal cord runs through the skull and up into the brain. And when you start to get stressed, that constricts. And so it's probably likely that spinal fluid wasn't getting to where it needed to go.
Right.
So that puts my mind to rest about the cause of the blackout. It's more to do with tension and messages not flowing as they should. And so then the old nervous system pulling the old shutdown switch.
Cool. Well, not cool, but
interesting. Something to learn from.
Curious. Curious, yeah.
Yeah.
And so what led you to think that it might have something to do with being competitive?
Because during the last number of weeks, I have been aware of the part of me that feels tired, that wants to slow down, that wants to take a break, that wants to like have a holiday.
Mm.
But I've also been aware of the part of myself that has really been wanting to achieve many things.
Right.
And the achievement factor feeling really good.
Right.
But at the same time, also this feeling of being quite disembodied, like very in my head.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's the drive to achieve goals within a particular time frame, or things need to be done now. I need to do this now because of these things that need to happen subsequent to that. And trying to fit increasingly more and more into each week. Yeah.
Yeah. So keen to work with you to help you unpack and explore that competitive thinking based on your intuition. One of the things I would just flag though is that it is based on your intuition. Now
that could be other things.
It could be other things. It could be other thinking styles. It could be something else unconscious, and that's okay, right? So we'll still explore that. It's quite possible that something else might show up.
Yep, cool. I'm open to that.
Yeah,
I'm open to learn.
Yeah. So you shared with me already the conflict, and my suggestion to you was, hey, let's do that visually on the Miro board and actually see it.
Why do I want to change this pattern? I guess this is the goal. And to qualify that, sustainable growth to me means growth that is in tune with my body, mind, and spirit.
Cool. And so what do you hope to get from that?
I hope to be able to do life in a way that maybe it's a new way of. So what I notice is it's the thinking patterns that encourage me to do something which is going against what my body is telling me to do in a way. So it's like maybe it's to reduce the conflict between conflict. It was like one part of me that wants to keep going and another part of me that wants to slow down.
I couldn't help thinking it was reduce the conflict between body and mind. Does that resonate?
Yeah.
If you did that, would the outcome be sustainable growth that is in tune with your body, mind, and spirit?
It seems logical that it would.
Yeah.
First,
okay, well, that
really
gives us
acknowledging that the conflict is there and then working with it to make it a win-win.
yeah, absolutely. So that kind of gives us a really nice context. This is what the purpose of it is. This is why we're exploring this particular thinking style. In that context could be with any of the thinking styles. But you have this intuition that it might be about competitive, that might be causing the biggest conflict between body and mind.
Let's see.
Cool. Okay. So obviously in the on the Miro board, and I'll just make sure that you are following me. We've got the circumplex. I'm just going to step through these slides because you're very familiar with the circumplex. What we're trying to do is we're trying to raise our center of gravity. And even though the competitive is sitting out here, by reducing it, it will usually have an impact out here. And so raising the center of gravity is the objective. And so now we actually work on the experience itself. And the first place that we go to, you can see all the different styles. So what I'm going to invite you to do is to read the competitive style. And tell me, when you read the competitive style, how does that relate to what you've been experiencing?
Well, I can say that there is something to be said about status.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely that idea of winning or keeping score. It does sort of feel like trying to be proud of myself, and there's a feeling of status around that, like either I'm achieving something or I'm not, and then if I'm not, then I've sort of gone down a bit in my own self reckoning, self-worth.
Yeah, that kind of sits really nicely with, you know, challenging or proving self. So it's about status, but it's an internal status, it sounds.
Exactly.
Right.
Outperforming. So it's and the idea about losing, it's interesting because it feels like the kind of efficiency about not wanting to make the most of time, like you've got a certain amount of time,
right?
And so trying to cram as much into that amount of time as possible to achieve what it is that wanting to achieve. And so I guess the converse feeling of that is that if I don't do that, that I'm somehow losing time, or I'm losing some sort of opportunity. That would make sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. Nice. So the thing that you're complaining about is the competitive thinking. So in the post-it note in the red box, just write competitive thinking. And in the post-it note in the yellow box, not competitive thinking. And just for a bit of fun, I'm going to color code these. And we'll make that one blue. So what would be the benefit to you of not using competitive thinking?
Well, keeping it simple, inner peace.
So in order to have inner peace, I don't want to use competitive thinking. Cool. What is the benefit of using competitive thinking?
Something to do with achievement, but also something to do with challenging. I think it's challenging. Challenging myself. Because it's something to do with growth. And it's something to do with achievement.
When we were talking before and I asked you, what does the competitive thinking style mean to you? One of the themes that showed up was about time. There's something about time. So in order to make the most of my time, I use competitive thinking.
Yes. And the compromise between the two that has been extending my hours.
So the undesirable effect is extending hours.
Mm.
Right. And not doing the things that you know you should or want to do because of the limited, so you're compromising.
Like less rest in order to achieve more.
Right. Yeah. So now I see how that fits with achieving stuff, right?
Mm.
So in the blue box, if you have inner peace and you make the most of your time, what does that look like?
Effective use of time. More than that, though. Balanced. Something about balance when it comes to peace. Balanced. Maybe it's balanced life.
Mm. I was just reflecting on this. I may come back to the conflict, but in the meantime, I'm going to copy these. You mentioned some undesirable effects effectively that were showing up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I bring you to me again. What are some of the things that I'm sure, are you on the same page? Yep. What are some of the things that show up? You said one of them was extending hours.
There's almost this problem show up. Ignoring more work, less rest.
Mm-hmm.
Tired.
Would passing out be one of them?
Oh yeah, I should probably add that one. That's
No, this is cool. Tired, less rest.
Oh, that's tired, right?
Yeah, so I can see what you would have done there. Take on more, tired, extending hours, passing out, less rest. What else would show up?
More focus on my goals, less on family needs.
Working harder, right?
Mm.
Extending hours, but also working harder. Yeah, I can see how all of those things would lead to a less balanced life. And ultimately, as that keeps cycling on itself, and this is something, this is actually a new thing that I've started doing in terms of the process, is that over here we put less balanced life, or whatever the person is describing.
Yeah, so it shows how it gets you further away from your goal.
Yeah, but more importantly, here is the bind that people end up, when we have a less balanced life, I feel pressure. I'll use a different one. I feel pressure to use more competitive thinking, and I feel pressure not to. And that's the loop.
Mm.
And it's really stable, which is why we find it difficult to stop, because we just keep going round and round. Yeah, and just
so
for
it's
your...
at that bottom row, that's like me during the week, and then the top row is like Saturday, Sunday.
Right, right. Awesome. And that's how, so that's been your strategy for trying to live a balanced life. You just go hard out during the week and just chill out in the weekend.
Yes, do a lot of family focus, like really present.
Yeah.
Like really take care of myself.
Yeah.
So I can prop myself back up for Monday.
So just as an observation, I'm really familiar with that, except in other areas it's called binging.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, but it's not very balanced.
Mm.
So you're binging inner peace and then binging work.
Mm.
Now that's my language, but does that make sense to you?
Yes, I can see that it's two extremes. It's like
Yeah.
going to one extreme and then going to the other extreme.
Yeah.
Rather than creating any kind of sustainable life.
Yeah.
A way of actually living.
So that brings me actually back to something which I noticed straight off the bat, which is when we look at what you are hoping to achieve, sustainable growth that is in tune with my body, mind, and spirit, reduce the conflict between mind and body. That's consistent. That's what a balanced life means to you. And yet that's the bind that you find yourself in. So this is exciting because we know how to solve this. If we can solve this, we may be able to have a strategy or a solution that will actually deliver on what you are hoping to achieve. And so the way that we do that is to, we look at the conflict and we go, first of all, the hidden commitment is to make the most of your time. And that's a perfectly good commitment, to make the most of your time. What options do you have to make the most of your time without using competitive thinking? And it has something to do with inner peace. Give me three options or three tactics, if you like.
So one of the ways that works well for me is to start the day in a way that's really healthy for me.
Yeah.
So let's call that healthy start.
Yeah.
Another way is to be able to focus when I am dedicating myself to working on whatever it is. By having a healthy start, I know I'll be in good mind and good energy to do that. And then if I can focus, so focus on one thing at a time. And having a plan. And being thoughtful about what I choose to spend my time on.
Be thoughtful, yeah.
So not just saying yes to any old thing, making sure it is something that is actually important.
Oh, so what's that? Say yes to the right things. Oh, and say no to the wrong things?
Say yes to things that are important. And say no. I need to develop some criteria for saying no.
Oh, that's a good post-it note. Develop some criteria for saying no.
And asking for help. There's another one.
There's some good tactics in there. We've already taken care of this competitive thing. We've got a whole lot of tactics that'll do that. But now what I want you to do is, it's basically a summary of balanced life, inner peace, and not competitive thinking. But what's a way of doing it without thinking about making the most of your time? What can you focus on instead of making the most of your time that will still bring you the balanced life, the inner peace, and without competitive thinking?
Is it, we're trying to find something which encompasses the two?
Well, there's, yeah, the and makes it two different ideas, expanding time and focusing on outcomes. What's the commonality, the synthesis between those two things?
Me.
Yeah, but what specifically about you? Time and outcomes.
Well, it's like the scarcity focus versus the abundance focus.
So the abundance focus. Focus on abundance.
Plenty of time. Plenty of opportunity.
I think in brackets, put there is plenty of time and plenty of opportunity, because that's a really nice way of describing the abundance focus. And that I can see would bring a balanced life with inner peace without being competitive.
Yeah, there'd be less of a rush.
Less of a rush. So let's see what happens when we bring all of that together. So a balanced life is about reducing the conflict between body and mind and sustainable growth. And your objective to help you deliver on that is to focus on abundance. There is plenty of time, plenty of opportunity. And there are a number of tactics that you can use. I'd like to put these in prerequisite order. Which one of these do you think you should use, would go first?
Let's put that one first.
Yeah.
And then during each day, that one. And that one. And in order to do that, I already need to come up with that one. Maybe I should do that one first of all, in fact. I should ask for help first, just because I want to practice doing that more. In fact, maybe I should do that before I even make a plan. No, because I need to know what I need to ask for help for. That looks reasonable. Yep.
Okay. So I just want to check this. In order to get a healthy start to the day, I need to develop some criteria for saying no.
I was kind of assuming that this would be something that I would do and then bring that to each day.
Yeah. What I'm looking for is, rather than the do, is if you think about having already achieved it, what have you done? Now, for example, if you develop some criteria for saying no, would that be a healthy start to the day? Because those criteria could change all the time.
Yeah, let's allow for them to be changeable.
If you created time to be thoughtful about what you choose to spend time on in the day,
it might help me develop some criteria.
Well, it also would be a healthy start to the day. And if you have a plan, that could also be a healthy start to the day. Do you see what I'm saying in terms of how they build on each other? So, for example, if I just move these around, and you can move these any way you like. If I have a plan, if I have some criteria, get thoughtful, create my plan for the day, think about my plan as being a focus on one thing at a time. That is a healthy start to the day. Every day.
And so then that means taking the time to think before committing to anything, because it's only after I've done all of that that I can say yes or no.
Yes. Then you can say yes to the things that are important, and you can even ask for help when you know what they are. And if you do it that way, then that leads to a focus on abundance. And that will lead to a balanced life. And so if you follow that path every day, what impact would it have on this?
I would be less tired. I would be making time for rest or whatever else I happened to need to take care of the old body. I would be taking on the things which I choose to take on. And
probably more of it. So it's interesting. It's not taking on, we probably need more clarity around what taking on more means, because that may not be an undesirable effect.
That's
it's
only if
what you're taking on more of.
Thoughtful, yeah. Probably not working harder. Probably
working smarter.
Working more effectively, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably not passing out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And allowing enough energy for focusing on the goals I choose to focus on, as well as the family goals.
And again, if we look at more focus on my goals, I mean, that sounds like a great thing. Less focusing on family needs. So a bit more clarity around why that is undesirable, perhaps. But look, the great thing is that that plan logically makes sense, that if you follow that, you will reduce the competitive thinking. And this one here is the one that holds it all together. Focus on abundance. Not scarcity was the word you used.
Yeah. Good reminder. There's plenty of time.
Yeah, and plenty of opportunity.
Mm.
That's hard to remember though sometimes, isn't it?
Well, that's why we've got to practice.
Yes.
And we especially need to be in situations where we're challenged so that we can practice it.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So nice work.
Yeah, well, I will have plenty of opportunity to practice it over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And the great thing is that I have a ton of agency over how I spend my time.
Yeah.
So I can 100% hand on heart say that how I choose to spend my time is my call.
Yeah. I just really love this idea that at the beginning of every day, you develop some criteria for saying no. And I'm kind of going, oh my God, how cool was that? Man, I need to do some of that. It's like, wow, what an awesome solution. Develop some criteria for what am I going to say no to today? Oh, how liberating is that? Well, actually, it's not even what am I going to say no to. What is my criteria for saying no? It's not what is my criteria for what I'm going to do. It's like, what's my criteria for what I'm not going to do?
Yeah, and this is actually quite empowering because it's things like, I'm not going to do anything that the children can do for themselves.
Right.
I'm not going to do anything that it's somebody else's responsibility, but they just haven't done yet.
Right.
So it's like, well, what could I do instead? Well, I could just let them take the responsibility or the consequence for that.
Yeah.
So already there's some liberation here. There's also the likelihood that some people won't like it, but I'm prepared for that. Yeah,
because I've been thoughtful about what I'm going to spend my time on. And actually, I just love it. It's like, wow, this is pretty cool.
Yeah. And there's enough motivation there for what the future could look like that actually I'm prepared to have some slightly uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah.
To create that freedom and to make sure I don't pass out again.
Yeah. Oh, this is quite like there's lots of things triggering for me at the moment. Because Goldratt talks about this. Do the things you should do and don't do the things you shouldn't do. But I hadn't thought about develop some criteria for saying no is how you create abundance.
Yeah, amazing, eh?
Of course.
It's basically like creating constraints.
Yes. Wow.
I know.
How do you achieve abundance in your life? Create a constraint.
Yeah, easy. Stop trying to create abundance. That's how you create abundance.
That is so good. That is so good. Wow. That is amazing.
That's funny. I love that. Life has such a sense of humor.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Oh, well, that's the highlight of my week.
This is such a great outcome from having to spend 4 hours in A&E. Well worth it.
Yeah.
Would not recommend. But hey, in this instance.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, 4 hours in A&E, I can totally see how that relates to taking on more, working harder, less rest time, tired. Yeah, I can totally see how that would cycle on itself. You take 4 hours out of your life.
It would take a whole
and that,
day out of my life in that case.
yeah, and then you reduce the amount of time that you have, which reduces the amount of abundance.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, that is just magic.
I'm looking forward to practicing this actually.
Yeah.
It is not what I expected, but that to me means I've learned something, which is exactly what I needed. So thank you very much.
And likewise, thank you for sharing it. Because it's just like, oh, wow. Develop some criteria for saying no every single day.
It's Friday afternoon. I feel some need to rest and bring a little bit more balance back to the life.
Yeah.
Focus on abundance.
I like your criteria for saying no.
Thank you very much. I am practicing it.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff.